So we arrived in Mombasa. We traveled there by ship. We sailed for 6 weeks. A train was already waiting for us when we arrived. The train was specially prepared for us. So we continued our travel by train. We were very impressed with the African landscape. It was such a beautiful landscape. Beautiful nature. It was the first time we had seen Africans. We saw the villages and the landscape from the passing train. Along the way, we wondered what we could expect to find at our destination. We got to Arusha, and from Arusha we traveled further on trucks to our camp. Our camp was in the middle of a jungle, a real jungle. They had just cleared out the trees and built round little houses, mud huts really, for 4 people each. They were made out of clay and covered with banana leaves and different kinds of grass. There weren't any ceilings in these houses. When we looked up, we could only see a roof. There was just one window, no glass, only an insect net. There were 4 beds. The floor was made out of soil. First, they divided us into groups to place into the huts. So I was with 4, not 2 girls. Oh, no, I'm sorry, with 3 girls. I was the 4th one. Food, they fed us well, and we had doctors taking care of us. Every child had a thorough physical to treat the many different diseases. They gave us new clothes because we didn't have any, only what we had received earlier in Iran, which we had worn every day, and by now they were worn out. They took us to a warehouse, and we tried to see what fit each child best. The clothing came mostly from the Red Cross. The majority had been sent from the United States. Second-hand clothing. So this is how they made sure that we were dressed. Then it was time to start school. They examined us and divided us up into classes. It wasn't easy for me because I was still sick with malaria, and also I had missed 2 years of school in Siberia. Some of the children went to school in Russia. They had this opportunity because they had been in the cities. Where I had been deported to, there was no way to even think about going to school. So my sister and I, we lost 2 years of schooling. I started 6th grade there. Our school, at the beginning it was a tent. We were joking. There is a Polish proverb written with a stick in the sand, but this is almost literally what we did at this school. It felt like writing with sticks in the sand. Our textbooks and our notebooks, I still have some of them at home. We got them later. But in the beginning, we only had small cards or individual pages and small pencils. We sat on small boxes on the sand under the tent. Our teacher would talk, and we would write it down on the small pieces of paper that we placed on our knees. Gradually, from day to day, things would change and get better. Later, they built schools with real classrooms. We had a real high school, a school for mechanics, a gymnasium for merchants, a gymnasium for pedagogues, a school for seamstresses. So there were a lot of choices for us. I must tell you, you couldn't imagine how badly the youth there wanted to learn. It was amazing. They didn't want to lose time. Nobody complained. Oh, it's difficult. We don't have textbooks. I don't have a notebook to write in. We don't have this or that. No, everybody tried their best. We passed a book from one to the other because we only had one book for the entire class. And we visited with one another after school. It was very convenient that our mud huts were so close. We would visit and exchange books and notes. We prepared our homework together. This is how we learned. As I recall, everybody wanted to go to school. The worst part, in the beginning, was how to deal with the insects. It was terrible. You can't imagine how the insects attacked us. In particular, I pitied the small boys in the orphanage, from 4 to 10 years old. They would run around not paying any attention at all, and we would have to check them for insects all the time. We were older, so we could always check each other and ourselves. We checked our legs, hands, and arms. We would check one another. It was exactly like this. If at any moment you squeezed a small bump on your skin, a worm would pop out. Also, there were worms that formed small bubbles, especially under our feet. They bit so hard. At first, you wouldn't notice. For a while it was okay, you could walk, but then something would itch. There would already be a red mark, so we would take a needle and try to poke it out. At first there was a bubble, and then you were left with a hole. So these young boys, their feet were bleeding all the time, and sometimes you could see their bare bones. It was terrible, fighting those insects and worms. And also snakes. In the night, we had mosquito nets, and sometimes snakes would fall onto our nets from above. There were a lot of snakes. The restrooms were, of course, outside. So at night, if we needed to go, we had to go in 3s or 4s. We made agreements to go together because we were scared of the animals and the snakes and also the natives. You never knew what was waiting outside. We were scared of the natives. We had to be very careful. So in the beginning, it was very difficult to live with all of this, but later, gradually, all of these things were cleaned up and the jungle was cleared away. We started organizing gardens. We tried to care for them. Slowly, the camp was extended and buildings were built for the orphanage. A special settlement was built just for the orphanage. They built buildings. 1 building for every 12 children. 6 children on one side and 6 on the other, and a tutor in the middle. The restrooms, of course, remained outside. The showers were outside too. We had a dining room, and we went there 3 times a day for breakfast, lunch, and supper. Later, we also had a club to visit, in which we could do our homework or hang out with friends because there were only beds inside of our own buildings, one next to the other, a little lamp at every bed, and shelves for our suitcases and baggage. Because we kept our clothes in suitcases or in bundles. There were no closets. We only had these small shelves, and everyone had 1 shelf. The first had this one, then the second one, then the third. That was all there was inside of our rooms.